Yes, shifting focus from women in business to oil and gas. Yes, and when we're talking about that, we're not talking about the prices of fuel, as a majority of Kenyans focus on downstream, and we're now looking at, the upstream sector of oil and gas in the country. And taking us through this conversation is none other than the program manager, oil and gas mining program, that is Mturi Kamau of Kanko. We can say Kanko because it also deals with matters of conservation, to just bring us up to speed of where we are and what then this means for local companies who are seeking to invest in oil and gas, as well as matters of conservation, in as much as we are focusing on, tapping into this niche. We also need to take care of our environment. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
There's been a misconception that, we just recently discovered oil and gas in the country. But just to learn, it started all the way back in 1960. We just made a breakthrough in 2012.
Yeah.
So why have we, why has it taken so long for us to get to where we are in as far as oil and gas exploration in the country is concerned?
All right. Thank you. First of all, I think it's important to break down the petroleum value chain. We have the midstream, the upstream part, the midstream, and the downstream. So the upstream majorly focuses on exploration and extraction. The midstream largely focuses on transportation, and the downstream now is all these other things: diesel, petrol. Compounds in the lipstick that you have on, the makeup, pharmaceutical components, and all that. The upstream part of petroleum began in the late 40s, early 50s. It's important to also understand that the country is divided in 63 oil blocks. And a number of companies at that particular time actually came prospecting for crude oil or gas. We have Shell that did quite a bit of work along the Lamu Basin. That's a bit of onshore and offshore. We also had a number of companies that prospected for crude oil in the 1970s, 1980s. Around the South Lokicha Basin. So it's been there, but the things became interesting when Tullow came into the picture in 2010. And by 2012, they had actually struck commercial quantities of crude oil with an estimated stock tank oil in place of about 4 billion crude oil barrels. So that's where things became interesting. And we now got into a conversation of how do we then take advantage of the crude oil that had been discovered. And the conversation then shifted to the construction of the Lamu-Lokicha crude oil pipeline, which is estimated to be approximately 892 kilometers. And also just setting up the necessary infrastructure with the marine terminal that is supposed to be set up in Lamu. So it's been there's been quite a lot. I know one of the things that one of the major milestones was the flagging off of the crude by the President Kenyatta about 2.5-3 years ago under the early oil pilot scheme, and that majorly was to see how our crude oil would, perform in the international oil markets against the Brent. Second of all, it was also to set up the necessary infrastructure to ensure that we are able to take that crude oil via road from Lokicha to Mombasa. So, and lastly, and which is most important, is to understand our reservoir through the extended well testing and just trying to figure out the recoverable crude oil, because we cannot just remove everything. It is estimated that so far we can only get about 560 million barrels of crude oil. So yeah, that is what has happened in the last decade.
Thank you for that quick summary into history there. Yeah. But what is very clear is that we have, minimal presence of local companies, especially investing in upstream oil and gas. Why do you think that is so? Are we lacking capacity? Is it capital intensive? Do we lack the know-how? What is, why isn't it an opportunity we can tap into?
Yeah, first of all, I think the opportunity, Kenyans tapped into the opportunity long ago. For those who had a chance to go to Lokicha, there was a program where the locals were empowered to buy 4x4 vehicles that they'd actually lease out to the company.
Yes.
There was that, the community women's groups that would provide goods and services to the project camps. There were the labor came from the locals. Yes, but it all comes down to, have we set up the necessary policy architecture to ensure that we are able to actually tap into the sector fully, and this goes down to we have the local content bill of 2016, and it provides a very clear framework as to how we as a country can actually fully tap into the extractives industry sector. So the bill rather proposes quite a number of things. It proposes for the establishment of a database for suppliers. It provides for HR development, and mostly just looking at how to put Kenyans first when it comes to opportunities. And I would have thought that we should have already passed the act. But what we've seen so far is that there exists a policy framework that looks at all sectors of agriculture, extractives, but we need one act that actually provides this provision, so that by the time these operators actually land in Kenya to prospect, they actually understand that this is what we expect, so that at least as a country we are able to fully tap into the oil and gas sector.
We don't go tailor-making and customizing depending on who has landed on our ground.
Exactly, because local content provisions right now are embedded in the production sharing contracts, which by and large the contracts that governments and private sector, these oil and gas companies actually enter into, and which are not private to the public. So with an act in place, then it would mean that we'd actually be able to tailor-make it to whatever can actually benefit us. Yes.
We have a sketch that this is what we want and this is how we want it.
Exactly.
What and how.
Yes.
Now, the issue of environmental conservation, especially when it comes to oil and gas, we are lucky, and I say maybe it's just something in waiting. We have seen, oil spills and such. Do we have policies, as you've said, do we have policies locally that ensure that environment doesn't suffer in the long run owing to these oil and gas exploration initiatives or programs?
Yeah, again, in the last decade, a lot has happened.
Yes.
We have been able to identify, because it was a relatively, we had not gotten to that point where we are saying, okay, we have crude oil. Yeah. What do we do? So the last 8-10 years have provided an opportunity for us to sit back and reflect and set up the necessary measures to ensure that our environment is protected. For instance, we have the Environmental Management and Coordination Act of 1999. It has regulations. It has the Environmental and Social Impact Assessment regulations. But we are now looking at policy reforms in a way that we are now talking about having integrated, impact assessment regulations that will speak to the emerging sectors, and a lot is happening, because a lot of the times environmental and social impact assessments are by and large mandated. You as a proponent of a project, you need to actually undertake it. When we first started, a lot of the studies were lacking to a certain extent, because there was no adequate public participation. You can imagine the people in Turkana and Lamu. I mean, yeah. But now we have a community that can actually voice their concerns as a group and agitate for the change that they want. And through that process, we are now looking at study reports that are actually informed to a certain extent by the voices of the people that they affect. Because I'm in Nairobi. The person who's going to be affected by, for instance, an oil spill is going to be
in Lokicha or, God forbid, Lamu.
Exactly. And essentially, that's why we need to really put a lot of effort in ensuring that the social and environmental concerns are well factored into. And that's why a lot of these studies have the environmental management plans that ensure that, say, for instance, when these companies undertake exploratory drilling, they are able to rehabilitate the space that they are using to the initial, to a way that it was in the initial beginning. So these are just some of the things that we are not perfect. We are lacking to a large extent, but it's a process that I think in the next few years it's actually going to be, yeah.
But then how do we talk? We've mentioned that we need to have, these communities need to be included in this then. How do we ensure that they are included to even take up a major role in as far as, this activities are happening? They're happening on their home ground, but how then do we have these communities come in and work towards the development and benefit from this, especially when talking about upstream?
A lot of the times they'll say that it's a technical field, and it is. From the time they begin seismic surveys to the drilling to setting up the infrastructure for the degassing units, the central process, it's technical. And I remember for Talo they had begun a program where they provide scholarships for a number of locals to actually go out and gain that technical experience. But again, it also comes back to what we were talking about, local content, where how do we ensure that communities actually benefit? In the bill, for instance, it gives provisions under Section 22 on succession plans. So if for instance we have a foreigner who's actually come and is say for instance a drilling engineer, they are able to groom one of our locals in order to take up that particular role. So with such futuristic acts, I think we are going to be better placed to be in a position where, as a country, we are able to fully tap into the oil and gas scene. Yeah.
Now, what impact would the now increase in demand for fuel, or the rise in fuel prices, have on the oil and gas exploration aspect of it?
Yeah, right now, a liter of petrol, for instance, in Lokicha and Lodwar goes for about 130 shillings. Oh, yeah. So it's pretty higher than what we experience here. Because we have to
look at the issue of infrastructure, how to get there.
Exactly. Right now, there isn't much that is happening in terms of exploration, and simply because once we hit the commercial quantities, the joint venture partners now need to sit down and figure out if they actually have the financial muscle to actually take the project forward. And we've been waiting for the final investment decision for, I think this is the 3rd year now.
Yes.
But all in all, it takes quite a bit of time. When it comes to when we are actually experiencing now peak productivity. Of course, things like the rigs, the drilling rigs, are normally powered by diesel engines. So, I mean, the cost is definitely going to shoot up, and it's actually going to be a recoverable cost. So, when we start exporting the crude oil, the company will have to factor in that at one point
operational costs
were very high, and it has to be recovered.
Now, there's a shift towards green energy. What's your take on that?
No, I mean, we locally as a country, we are seeing that conversation gain momentum. Companies like Eni have begun talking about reviving the old refinery in order to undertake what's it called, you getting agricultural produce and using it to generate that energy. So that's one of the things that we've had. We know that Africa Oil has also begun, or rather has talked about tapping into the Lake Turkana wind project. So we are it's a step in the right direction. Again, we also need to ensure that we set up the policy architecture to ensure that issues of renewable energies are actually really factored into the conversation as a nation. Mm-hmm. Yes.
In our current state, and I wanted to use Nigeria as an example. Nigeria, they generate all that, but power blackouts are day in, day out. So with the lack of this, or rather this shortfalls or other gaps where we are in as far as policy, not just the environment, but also, just regulating or rather tightening the rope so that people don't take advantage. And from where you sit, what recommendations then would we do you have to ensure we do not go the Nigerian way? I mean, futuristically speaking, we are not there yet, but we are forward thinkers. What do you think we need to do? Tighten the ropes.
All about governance. Mm-hmm. It goes down to governance. We need policies and legislations in place. We need institutional capacity. We need to avoid the problem of institutional overlap roles, where we have two institutions that are actually regulating one sector. We need to ensure that community voices are actually brought on board. We need to ensure that as civil society, a few years ago, civil society was viewed as an enemy to government. But at least for the last couple of years, we've been in a position where we engage, we sit down as different stakeholders, and we talk about the issues that affect us. So in the next few years, if we actually, right now, a lot is not happening. One, due to COVID and due to other factors. But it's time for us to re-strategize and think about where we want to see ourselves in the next decade, so that by 2030 we can actually say that as a country, this is how far the sectors come. And I know a lot of many more companies are actually going to come. It's all about creating a conducive environment for investors. Yeah.
I want to go to a rather controversial aspect. Sorry for that. The studio can really get quite heated. But it's not that you're uncomfortable with the conversation that we're having. No. Yeah, the studio can be very, samahani kwa hayo. We will have some water later after we're done with this conversation. Okay. Now, the issue of the Somali Maritime border dispute, and we see the land in question there. It's an area that has already been given, the title that it has, potential as far as oil and gas is concerned. What does Kenya stand to lose if that goes south? I know we have 113 plus square kilometers of that land that is in question, but within the oil and gas sector, what do we stand to lose? I mean, we have been starting this journey for a while. If we lose that, what happens?
Okay, so of the 63 blocks that I mentioned earlier, there's a huge chunk of the blocks that are offshore. And these are blocks that, concessions that the government has set aside so that any company that wants to come and prospect for crude oil or gas can actually come and do that. But if we actually lose it, then that means that we lose a number of blocks in that particular section. So essentially, if that is an area that is rich in crude oil deposits, essentially that is actually we are actually going to have lost that. Another thing that
would it impact on Kenya's trajectory in as far as oil and gas sector is concerned, and as far as growth is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, because again, I said we get about over 6,000 products from crude oil. So you can imagine, and one of the biggest industries is a petrochemical industry. I mean plastics, things that are used on a daily basis. So you can imagine this is actually crude oil that we can actually get, export to international markets, or refine it if we actually decide to go that way. Yeah? Yes, and it can actually be used for local consumption. So we stand to lose a lot, and not only for the oil and gas. A few years ago, we began the conversation on blue economy. So also looking at the maritime life, the fish that can actually be gotten from that particular area, we'd actually stand to lose quite a bit. And I think it's quite unfortunate, so to speak, that we are in such a position where we are trying to fight for our territory. But I mean, where the government just needs to put in as much effort to ensure that we retain that particular border section. Yes. So
if it went the other direction, well, we'll be missing and losing out. But now looking at now what it will mean, especially when it comes to, you know, the blue economy. You've brought in now that other, you know, harnessing, you know, attributes over the blue economy going forward. That is something, the maritime dispute is something that we really need to be, other than security, because I think we have seen the documents there, the issue of security.
Yes.
But then what does that mean for the East African bloc, you know, when it comes to oil and gas, now that we're having this dispute and such?
You know, a lot of the East African countries, and not just looking at Kenya, Uganda, for instance, is in high gear to ensure that you know they you know export their crude oil with reserves of about 1.2 billion crude oil barrels. And Tanzania as well. They've been the front leader for the extraction of gas. So with a regional perspective, all these countries are in the run to ensure that they can actually extract and you know sell whatever they have so that they can make money. Uganda, for instance, is planning to set up a refinery. Tanzania was also, I'm not sure if they have it in place, but they had Statoil, the Norwegian company, and a few other companies who had actually come together to set up, to finance for a gas reticulation plant. So as a country, these are some of the things we also need to look at what our neighbors are doing. Yes, and try and position ourselves strategically, because we have a large part to either benefit or lose out completely. Yes.
We cannot afford to lose. Basically, what I'm hearing, you're being very politically correct in this. You know, when you're speaking about, we know it's in dispute. We'll be keenly focusing what the ICJ makes out of it in terms of a verdict. But indeed, Kenya does stand to lose there. Parting shot as you come to a close when you talk about environmental conservation vis-a-vis, you know, oil and gas exploration in the country.
We're in a place where we now need to be strategic thinkers. We need to look back at what has happened in the last 10 years. We need to now come up with a game plan as a country. I will not go down to local communities, government, as a country, and ensure that besides the benefits, because there are a lot of, again, when you're talking about policy architecture, we talk about the Sovereign Wealth Fund. That's still a bill. We talk about, we still have the Petroleum Act regulations that are still not in place. So we need to ensure that we do that so that, communities are able to benefit, not only from the revenues, but also from all other angles where anything can come to them, not only monetary, but also in terms of human resource. As civil society, we also need to ensure that we continue with the conversation. There's a lot that's going on right now on land acquisition, compensation and resettlement. Those are conversations that need to continue going on so that at least we are able to address and properly manage the expectations of ourselves as a country. Yes.
Very well said. We have been speaking on matters of oil and gas exploration in the country, focusing on upstream and what local companies can do to tap into this niche market. Here has been, my guest this morning has been none other than the program manager at Oil and Gas Mining Program at, Community Action for Nature Conservation, that is KANCO, Mr. Ted Mturi Kamau. Indeed, Kenya we have also talked about that, debatable issue of the Kenya Maritime Somali dispute there. Indeed, Kenya does stand to lose, and we are in a race against time. Our neighbors are also looking and eyeing at oil and gas exploration. That brings Good Morning Kenya this morning to a close. Let's meet same time tomorrow for candid conversations around things that matter, including those stories that are making headlines. I'm Regina, Manyara.